Hi. Thank you for having me. First, round of applause for Mike for the wonderful job he's been doing for us. I haven't spoken much today, so you'll have to bear with me as I get my lungs together. Came straight from soccer practice, so I'm all juiced up on endorphins, so we'll see how this goes. We're talking about water today. Do we have any analytical chemists in the house? Oh, get out of here. This isn't a talk for you. Okay. How about any organic chemists in the house? All right. Okay, good. What about anybody who has high school level chemistry? Okay, hopefully this is a talk for you guys and that you'll understand some of the things that I'm talking about. Just know, you don't have to understand anything I say tonight to grow a bonsai. They will do just fine. But there are some geeky, nerdy stuff in here, and I am a chemist by training, so feel free to yell that you have no idea what I'm talking about if I say a word that you might not know. Okay, why does water quality even matter? I think everybody kind of in this room probably knows not all water is created equal. There's some good water, there's some bad water. But if you really think about it in terms of our trees and our bonsai, it's the thing that we give them the most. In all the care that we give them water more than anything. You know, fertilizer and pesticides maybe 3 or 4 times a year sort of thing. Pruning and wiring, get like one good shot at a lot of trees. Soil, you know, maybe go years before we change that, yet we argue until we are blue in the face about what soil is in that pot. And the reason we argue until we're blue in the face about what is in that pot is because we water them every single day, and the soil that they grow in is very much related to the water that we have. Some people might have things that grow just fine in a substrate that you've killed every single thing in. But what we never consider is that the sources of water that we're watering those with could be very different sources of water and have very different ramifications on the plant that we're growing. So another really important thing about what we're doing in bonsai and water is that they're in containers. They don't have a lot of soil mass and volume, so things that we're applying to them, you know, through fertilizers as well, but definitely in water, have the ability to accumulate in that pot over time as we keep giving it to them. And if we don't do anything or we don't know any better, it can cause problems over time that just look like a plant weakening and dying, and we don't know much about it. Okay, so all that said, how can we use some knowledge about water to impact how we cultivate our plants? And that's kind of the real point of the talk tonight, why we are here. And there's really only 2 major things that we need to know out of all the things when we talk about water quality. And the 2 major important factors for us are pH and TDS, which stands for total dissolved solids or total dissolved salts. I think it's more solids because they include the organics as well. But either way, either of those will get you close enough to the understanding of what they're talking about when they say TDS. Okay. Now, here's some charts that just kind of show the importance of our watering as it relates to bonsai. Most people in here are probably at the stage where they have some trees, maybe not all trees, but some trees in pumice, akadama, things like that. These soil columns are made of mostly inorganic things. Inorganic meaning non-carbon based. That's wildly different than what most soils are based off of, right, that are in the ground. They build up carbon content over time as plant and animal matter decomposes. That carbon gets recycled, but it goes through the soil first. And so there's typically a much larger carbon loading in soil than there is in some of our pots. Okay, so this is a chart for crops and soil, not fully applicable to our containers, but close enough. We're adding things like fertilizers for our inputs. Those are going into the soil column. Then those are getting either absorbed or desorbed by the substrate, the akadama or pumice or whatever. And then at that point, the plant has the option to take those up into the roots and into the rest of the plant. They can leach out of the soil, which is what a lot would happen here. They would come out of the bottom of our pots, or they just kind of sit there and do nothing. But we as bonsai people need to get all of these micronutrients into our plants, as well as the macronutrients that we all know about, for them to sustain health for decades and decades and generations. So pH, what do they need? I'm speaking about all of this because at some point those nutrients have to be available to the plant. And this is where pH becomes really important. Anybody who's had high school level chemistry has probably done a reaction where they titrate phenolphthalein into a solution to come up with the concentration of that solution. That's an acid-base reaction. And what we're seeing is phenolphthalein changes color in this case. It goes from clear to pink. But all sorts of elements will do these sorts of reactions as the pH changes. And as the pH changes, they become more soluble or less soluble in water, or they change form a little bit, and they become more available or less available for that plant to take it up through the roots. Because remember, they have to be in the solution, and then the solution needs to be near the roots, and then the roots need to be able to pull that into the plant. Okay? So, if we go over here and look at our chart, which by the way is in Leaf and Lore this month, and I meant to send it off before the meeting, but you'll get it after the meeting. This is about the ideal range that we want, somewhere in the 6 to 7 range. That's not an arbitrary number. The reason for that is because if we go up the chart, we can see the wider the band is here, the more available it is for a plant. And in this 6 to 7 range, it's not the best for all of them, but it's at least good enough for all of them that we're not going to cause a lot of problems for our plants. Now, if we move to the alkaline side, this is what we would call a base or something like that. Acids would be on the acidic side to a lower pH. That's a common thing that a lot of people do. They say raise the pH when they're talking about making something acidic, but you're actually lowering the pH when you make it acidic. So 0 is a very, very acidic solution. If you get up to 14, you're dissolving off your skin and stuff like that with the base. But anyway, in this column here, 6 to 7, we have most things bioavailable. If we come over here to the alkaline side, we start to lose things. The main thing we start to lose is this block of micronutrients: iron, magnesium, boron, copper, and zinc. Who's ever had a plant that has been suffering from chlorosis? Okay. Who has no idea what chlorosis is? Okay, let's start there. So chlorosis is a disease that plants sometimes get where they have very green veins, but the rest of the leaf is pretty off-colored, yellow, sometimes very yellow. I have a picture on my phone, which I'll try to get out later, but it's something that's very common, and it's very common because the plant can't get iron, zinc, which is not on here, boron, or iron, zinc, and copper into the plant is the main ones. So potentially, if you have chlorosis, you just have a pH problem with your water. You need to change your water. There's a whole lot of additives that you can add. One of the things you look online for how to fix chlorosis, it'll probably say add iron to your plant, which is good advice, except for the fact that if you're watering with water that's too high of pH, it doesn't matter if you put 10 pounds of iron on that plant, the roots are never going to see the iron and you're never going to be able to take it up. So super important pH. And then on the other side, if you get too low, you start to get excessive amounts of copper and iron in the plant. Copper is I think, known to a lot of us to be able to kill plants. It really can only kill them and have that bad effect on them if it's bioavailable to them. You know, we're not worried about watering the wire on our trees that much. That's because that copper is not bioavailable to those plants and doesn't add copper to the soil. If you add a copper salt on top of your plant, it's probably going to kill it. But all of these are related to pH, and if you go too low on the acidity scale, eventually you'll lead to cell death and kill your roots that you're trying to grow. Okay, now, although bonsai in inorganic soils is very close to hydroponic growing, it's not exactly hydroponic growing. There's some key differences between the two, but the principles kind of remain the same that we can think about. And here is a diagram showing cation exchange capacity, CEC. I'm sure we've all seen it. We talk about it sometimes. We act like we know what's going on. This is basically what's happening is the clay is negatively charged, akadama in a lot of our instances. It can bind to some of those cations. The cations are typically the form that a lot of those nutrients we just discussed uptake. That's their favorite form. And so exchanging the cations is really important to plant health. Kind of the pathway, I'm not going to go into it to bore everybody to death, but this is kind of what we're talking about here. And the reason that is important is because the more salts that you put into, the more positively charged particles you put into that negatively charged column, the less they'll be able to hang on to any fertilizer or micronutrients that you might also be applying to those plants. It has let's say it can do 100 exchanges. If it's already got 99 of its spots filled up, it's only going to take one of that fertilizer in. And one of the places you can add extra cations is if you have a lot of salts in your water. Why is this a problem? Salts in the water, what does it do? Most of the pathways in the roots happen through a process called osmosis. Osmosis is where you have a low concentration of one substance, a membrane in between that allows that substance to go through, and then a higher concentration on the other side of that substance. And naturally, the water will flow from the low concentration to the high concentration until they reach equilibrium. Same thing is happening in our roots. The roots pull up the water because they're making sugars, they're making starches, they have some of these micronutrients in the cells. And that builds up the concentration inside that cell. Then you add the water, and osmosis pulls that water into the cell to try to reduce that concentration gradient. Waters our trees. Now, let's see, I think I have it on the next slide. Okay, yeah. So here's a description, or picture of what I was just describing. And here's the effect that it would have on a plant. So when the concentration of something is less on the outside where the water is, and the concentration is greater in the plant, the water flows into it. When they're exactly the same, they just kind of sit there and nothing really happens. And when the opposite is true, when there's less sugars and starches in the plant, and then there's a high concentration outside, the water will actually flow out of the plant. So this should start clicking a lot of light bulbs to some people who have been told some crazy facts and they don't quite make sense. One, like, why would fertilizer kill a sick tree? Why would it be harmful for a sick tree?
A lot of salt.
It's a lot of salt. You're adding a lot of salt. If that tree's already sick, it's going to mess with this balance between the low concentration, high concentration, and that sick tree is going to have a lot harder, a sick tree who's not producing sugars and starches like it should, to build up that gradient inside the root. All of a sudden has additional pressure from the salts in the water, and it just fails and dies. If it can get over that and start producing that, maybe it would survive. But that's one of the reasons for that common piece of advice, not to water or not to fertilize sick plants. This is one of the reasons for it. Okay, so there's ranges that they can be. Everybody's water is going to have a little bit of dissolved solids. You actually don't want 0, because if it's 0, it's just going to pull all the stuff out of the plant that can be, and it's like distilled water. Nobody waters their plants with distilled water, right? Okay, that's good. But you can go too far. There's a safe range. 0 to 150 is ideal. Anything above 250, you probably want to start looking at something else. So I pulled these today from the St. Louis City, St. Louis County. I only did Missouri River. There's a Merrimack River as well on the county. But here is the reported numbers of the water quality that goes into the pipes. Total dissolved solids, 260, so right on that borderline. And then pH 10.4, that's ridiculously high. The city is a little bit better on the dissolved solids. This is actually double the number because this is measured in microohms and not TDS. You would divide it by 2 to get the TDS. But it's comparable, a little bit lower than the county, and the pH is also a little bit better. So city water quality is slightly better than county, depending for growing plants.
Can I tell you about? Can I clarify that pH number for you?
Yeah.
That sample is taken at the central plant right after it's purified.
Yep.
So by the time it gets to your house, it's going to be a little bit lower than that, but not a lot.
By the time it gets to some people's houses,
Yes.
it might be lower than that.
Yeah.
But for me, who lives right next to the treatment plant, it's not much lower than that.
No,
I have measured it pretty close. Also, these are the numbers they report.
Yep.
So there's some shenanigans that can go on before you're about to take samples, knowing that you're going to publicly report this and show it online.
Yeah.
So everybody should be aware of the water that they're getting. And what's in it. Okay, 2 quick points about water that are kind of unrelated to this pH TDS that are worth knowing. Water softeners, bad for plants. Don't water your plants with softened water. All it does is add sodium and take out the calcium. Chloramine, they're silent killers. They will kill, they're put in the pipes to last through the pipes, to kill all the bacteria and creepy crawly nasties in the water, so it's safe to drink. But they're also doing that if you're having any microorganisms growing in your soil and stuff like that. They're also doing that to your soil. So again, chloramine, if you're close to a water treatment plant, it's probably a pretty high dose in your water, and you need to consider doing something about that. They make filters for this, by the way. Okay, so common choices that you can do to improve your water quality if you're on a place that doesn't get the best. Tap water, we kind of talked about that. It comes right out of the tap. Most of us have hose bibs in our yard. Super easy, super convenient. Don't have to do much with it, but you get all that other stuff with it. So if it's not working for you, you might want to do something else. Gold standard, this is on the other end, rainwater. A lot of people in the group I know have rain barrels, and they collect water off the roofs or wherever they can get it and store it in those rain barrels and draw on that water when they need it. It's about the best water you can get. I think Mike has a sample here to show us that in person. But there's the obvious cons are that if you can't store it, you can't keep it free of algae and stuff like that. And if you run out of it, then you run out of it and you need a backup. So another choice would be reverse osmosis. This is the exact opposite of that process we talked about happening in the roots. We're forcing the water, we're reverse osmosing, so we're forcing it against the concentration gradient. And then we're making purer and purer water as we do that. Requires energy, requires setup, requires a pumping mechanism, but produces very good water for plants. Pulls out just about everything. Okay, so first, before we can do any of those corrective actions, we kind of have to know what we have. We talked a little bit about there's these water reports online, but they're only taken every few weeks and months, and they don't reflect the situation of every single house, every single place. So luckily there's things like pH meters, TDS meters. They're extremely cheap now because, as I mentioned, bonsai is very close to hydroponic gardening. There's a lot of hydroponic gardening going on, and so these things have really come down in price. You can probably get both of them, a good one, for less than 50 bucks, would be my guess.
This one in front of you is 15 bucks in the black case.
Okay, this one's 15 bucks. That's a good deal. You know, there's pretty simple tech in there, so they work pretty well. The pH meters are a little bit more finicky because they have to be calibrated to be accurate. So those that don't have a lot of chemistry experience might do better with just some pH test strips, which are very cheap as well. Can get them any aquarium store for sure. Yeah.
Would you water with RO water? Like, wouldn't that do the same thing as watering with mineral water?
It depends how RO your RO water is.
I have an RO filter at my house for my frogs, but I would not water my trees with it. But there's nothing in it when it's. I have to put minerals in it to make it safe for my frogs.
I believe you.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
You can go down really, really low on the RO water,
and
but you can
harm
also,
your trees?
Yeah, you can also run it at a faster rate where it doesn't have time to get all of the stuff out, and you can adjust because RO water just pushes more concentrated contaminants through the middle of a filter, and it takes the pure water out the outside.
Yeah.
So you can always mix a little bit back in if you wanted, but that seems like
There's a lot of waste with that.
a lot of waste. Yeah.
There's a lot of waste.
I think that RO water would probably work best if you were also using something like a dosatron, where you're adding fertilizers every single time you're fertilizing. But we have to get to the point of, like, why are we growing our trees if we get into this? Okay.
Reverse osmosis water.
Reverse osmosis. So this is basically the end of my talk. There's a few extra slides in there where I was just kind of going through species and stuff like that, of what was more tolerant of acid, what was more tolerant of alkaline stuff. I'm not going to go through those. You guys can peruse them at your leisure. But if you don't already know your water quality at your house, I highly recommend checking it. There's a lot of things that my trees do that I know is pH related. And I am working on a better setup. I haven't got there yet, so there's no shame in if you're using tap water. I am too at the moment. I'm looking to change that, but I know what I'm giving them is not ideal. And for example, my pines would be a lot healthier. There's something that really likes acid. It's really hard for me to grow pines year after year because they eventually get a little bit weaker, unless I'm really on top of my fertilizing game. So, something to look into. If you've got any specific questions, open for, yeah, Devin back.
Do you, like letting your water sit out from the tap in a watering can or something, does that just evaporate off the chlorine?
That's exactly right, yep.
Anything else?
So as I mentioned, they put the chloramine in the pipes, but they only want it to last as long as it can till it gets out of the pipes. So they don't really care what happens to it once it comes out, but they put it in right before it leaves the treatment facility to travel that whole distance in the pipes. So if you let water sit for 24 hours, it's actually better for your trees than if you water it right away. But that's a pain too. So,
Yeah.
Like the hose is really nice. Yeah, Mike.
I bought a filter up there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Here it
There's
is.
a small filter you can buy for that.
What filter is this?
That's just from Home Depot. It's an inline water filter for ice machines or whatever, and I put quick connects on each side, and it's you can get different grade filters. You can spin it over and up, but it has cylindrical filters inside. I think a lot of the chlorine, chlorine, and a lot of the other chemicals too, which I know it works better than the water spots on my cars.
So the filters that you do for the chlorine and chloramine are the activated carbon filters.
Yeah.
That's what gets rid of those two. It's one of the reasons I think that adding charcoal to your soil is probably in the literature and stuff like that. It's because it's helped to sequester some of that stuff and make trees healthier in places.
Those
Yeah.
go in your-
What about the ice water you get out of a refrigerator?
What about it?
It's filtered.
It's better than, I guess, if it wasn't filtered, but
Doesn't do anything.
if your ice is cloudy, it probably has some dissolved solids in it. And if it's clear, then it's probably not. Anything else? Jim, you have something?
I was gonna say, I use RV water filters.
Yeah.
And I just, between the tap and the hose, and they just have to be changed out every 3 months.
Yeah, it's pretty uninvasive to put a filter on your hose somewhere to keep out the chloramines at least. It's a pretty problem, but the TDS stuff, you have to do either RO or rainwater or something like that. Yeah.
We're talking between RO and activated charcoal filters. Is it correct that charcoal filters do not remove calcium?
Correct.
Correct.
Yes, that is correct. Otherwise, that's what we would do for hard water everywhere and get rid of it. But at work, my RO one has a carbon filter, then which one am I missing? The RO filter is the third filter it goes through. A particulate filter, a carbon filter, and then the RO filter. They make these in like a 3-pack. They sit side by side, pretty inexpensive, and you just like slide them in and go.